It is worth your time to review the equations associated with conics. Let's head over to the classroom for this review. Okay, let's review conics. The main one, there's three of them. There's circles, there's hyperbolas, there's ellipses. The main one you really should watch out for is circles. That's the one I've seen the most questions on. Circles. They usually are in the form of written quantity x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared, where the center of the circle would have coordinates of hk. Because if you look in each quantity, that would make each quantity 0 for the x and then the y. Okay, now let me give you an example of an equation of a circle. You could have the quantity x minus 3 squared plus y plus 4 quantity squared equals 16. If they asked you for what's the center of the circle of this equation, you would look inside the first quantity with the x. To get the x coordinate, it will be this, whatever the root is of that quantity. It's basically opposite of negative 3, which is positive 3. And then let's do the y. What would make the inside of that quantity 0 if y was negative 4? It would. So that's your center. Now, you got to keep in mind this number here on the right, that constant, that's r squared. So if you need to find what the radius is, that would have to be the square root of that given number of 16. So your radius would be 4 in this case. Let me do one more possible thing that they could throw at you. They could say, what if we give you the center of a circle is negative 1, 7, and the radius is 6. What would the equation be? Well, first start with your quantities. It's going to be x. Instead of look at your x number of that center, you would have to put a plus here, plus 1, because negative 1 would make it 0. That's your x coordinate, plus. Same thing kind of idea with the y. Would I put a positive 7? No. You would have to put a minus 7, just the opposite of that number, equals. Then don't forget, it's r squared equals r squared. What's r in this case? They told you 6. What's 6 squared? 36. That's about the basic, all you really need to know about circles. Let's talk about the other two. Let's talk about an ellipse. The general form is going to be very similar to that of a circle, x minus h quantity squared, but it's going to be over a number, a squared, plus the quantity y minus k squared over a number squared. We'll call it b squared. And these guys are going to be set equal to 1 usually. So that's a little bit difference. An ellipse basically is if you took a circle and you squished it down, it looks like an oval, like an egg or something like that. That's a general equation of an ellipse. Things to keep in mind, if this number is bigger, I'm going to call it like, first of all, I need to tell you that A is greater than B. So with this equation of ellipse, whatever number is bigger is going to determine what the major axis. Whether it's a horizontal is bigger than the vertical, all depends on which number is bigger, below the x or below the y quantities. So say I'm telling you this a is bigger, so a squared is going to be bigger than b squared. That's going to determine what your major axis is. This one would have to be the minor then. The minor axis. And that's about all you really need to know about an ellipse. So let's go ahead and talk about the other conic, called a hyperbola. A hyperbola, like I like to call it, that's how I remember how to spell it, hyperbola, looks very similar to the ellipse now. X minus h quantity squared over a squared minus, not a plus now, that's the major difference, minus here. Then you have the quantity y minus k squared all over b squared, and it's also equal to 1. Now for both the hyperbola and an ellipse, they still have a center of hk. K. Different shapes, a hyperbola will look like something like this. Along the x-axis, open up, kind of like, it almost looks like two parabolas like that. And that's if you have the x quantity positive. It would look like this, how we have it set up. If I was to change this negative to a positive in front of the y quantity, and then put the negative in front of the x quantity, it would look something like this. It determines where that negative is, determine if it opens up along a horizontal, x-axis if you will, or vertical axis, y-axis if you will. And that's about all you really need to know. There's nothing to deal with foci and some of the real nitpicky parts of these conics. Just know a general equation and how to find a center and a radius if you're dealing with a circle.